Hello there, this is Tootsie from Little Boondas, and today we are going to be repairing a BumGenius diaper. This aplix is really kind of crappy and pilly, and these velcro tabs have definitely seen better days. When they start to curl like this, they're pretty much useless. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. Just cut off the velcro tab and use your handy seam ripper. It doesn't really matter which way you start with or which way you go, but get yourself in the middle here. And start ripping out this velcro. Now, sometimes you can find a spot that's easy to slide your seam ripper in, but you want to be really careful as much as you can to not nick this fabric. So I just kind of go real slow, and this is the most tedious part, is prepping it. Now see, I nicked it just a little bit. You can see it's not the end of the world because you're going to cover it with a new velcro tab, and this isn't a waterproof part anyway, but as careful as you can be, it's nicer. Okay, I know this is really exciting, but I just want you to see the whole tab removal. Okay, we have removed one whole tab, and I'm going to repeat this process on the other side. Okay, so I have taken the tabs off of both sides. These laundry tabs, if this is the first time you're doing this, just leave them on. It's way too much of a pain in the butt to try to undo all of this stitching, so just leave them on. Now, this front part is the tricky part. Many people wonder, how in the world do I get this off? Well, sometimes this part is still nice and you can just leave it. This one's kind of yellowed and just gross, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. But this is the pain in the butt. First, you want to undo just a couple of these stitches here to get things moving. Now here you do want to be really careful with your seam ripping, because tears in the fabric here would not be good for the use of the diaper. Okay, so I just did a couple here on the front to allow me just to get to the inside. They serge the front of these diapers, so it's a real pain in the butt. Just wiggle your seam ripper right here in the middle. And then pull through. You can only do a couple stitches at a time, and you want to be really careful. So this is definitely a bit time consuming. Now you can kind of open it, and you can see there's another row of stitches here because they serged it. There. Now they use one continuous piece, so you're just trying to get to the middle here. And then by the end of this, usually my fingers hurt, because now that I have this little pocket open, I'm just gonna use one hand to hold it open and the other to rip out the stitches. And since I've got a little opening, I can access the bottom row and the top row of stitches all at once. I know. This is a pain in the butt, right? So I just go little by little. Okay, I think you get the idea. So it took me all of that to do like 1.5 inches. But this is a task that I save for sitting in front of the TV, or if we're going to my mother-in-law's house and it's a 40-minute car ride, I just take this in the car with me and do it while my husband is driving. So I'm going to finish this and I'll come back and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so I have finished seam ripping this whole part, and we need to get access to the middle. And like I said, this is all one piece. So you're going to kind of pull it apart like this and take your scissors and just cut it open right in the center. And then put your scissors in on either side and cut it open. Now, this is not going to affect the functionality of the diaper at all, because this isn't a part that is necessary to hold in any liquid, and we're going to sew it shut anyway. So now I have a big opening where I can access the Velcro panel. Thank goodness. You can use your finger and just kind of pull out all this thread in here from all the serging, and that'll make your finished product look a lot nicer when you don't have all this random thread sticking out. And there is a lot of it because sergers use a lot of thread. So all these little pieces you want to pick out. I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. But our next step is to take off this Velcro. So again, we're going to use our handy dandy seam ripper and just seam rip all the way through. Now this part you want to be as careful as you possibly can on, because you do not want to rip the pole here. So if you're more comfortable just picking out each individual stitch through the front, that's definitely the safest way. If you trust yourself, you can tackle it like this. Now once you've got a little bit ripped off, you can access it much more easily. And you're just going to go through and pick off all of these stitches. See, that's kind of dark here on the screen for you guys. Sorry about that. But you get the gist. So undo all of the stitching and remove this tab. Clean up all of this messy thread by just, pulling it off. And then we'll come back. Okay, I have finished taking off the front Velcro, and remember we had opened up the top here. So I am now going to measure out a new piece of Velcro. I have my big roll here. So this is generic aplix that I buy online, mostly through co-op, so I can get it for cheaper, and that's how you get a big 20-yard spool here. But I like to cut it just a little bit bigger, but you can see the difference, in my opinion, in the quality. How this one is all like fuzzy and pilly, and this stuff is just a lot neater. It does not get fuzzy, and it's much softer to the touch too. And I cut it just a little bit bigger so that I would have a little bit more adjustability in making the diaper smaller, which is always a good thing. So then it's really easy. I mean, I don't pin or anything. You certainly could, but I'm just going to match it up. You can still see the little holes from where I had ripped off the old one. So I'm just going to line it up right along with that. And when you get it up to your machine, you want to make sure that you're pulling the bottom part out and under so that you don't sew it, because that would stink. After all, what's the point of ripping the whole thing open if you're just going to accidentally sew it shut again? Now, some people like to do a zigzag over Velcro, and if that's your preference, that's great. If you've got good quality stuff, it's not going to fray, so you don't need to zigzag it. Pretty much my rule of thumb is I never buy anything with the actual brand name Velcro, because that stuff tends to suck. But if you buy aplix, that generally doesn't fray, so I don't zigzag it. But if I buy touch tape, then I do zigzag it because it tends to come apart a little bit easier. If you've got a needle down feature, this is a great time to use it so that you don't lose your spot. When you get to the corner, leave the needle down, pick the presser foot up, pivot, make sure you've got the back of the diaper up and out of the way. Leave the needle down, pivot. Again, make sure you've got the back out of the way. Okay, I'm getting to the end here. Last pivot, this is where I started, so I'm just going to go forward and then do a little back stitch. Needle up. And now cut your strings. Now when you open up a diaper, you'll probably see lots of stringy things, and while you're in here you might as well clip that junk off. It's amazing, really. You think of a commercially sewn diaper as being perfect, but it's really not that perfect. You know, it's just somebody making it, so there's often little strings left inside and whatnot. Okay, now we can go ahead and sew this shut, and there really isn't a scientific way to do it. You just kind of hold it and sew right over the line that you had seam ripped previously. The beginning is the hardest. I make sure that I have a firm grasp on the backs of my strings, because sometimes I need to pull on them a little bit to get it going. And then I do a little back stitch. And then I grab them again so I can give it a tug. So I'm pulling with my right hand, and with my left hand I'm kind of pushing the fabric through to give it some oomph. I'm just eyeballing, lining up my seams, and I'm just going to follow the seam, the line that they had done before. Again, if you've got the needle down feature, go ahead and keep on using that. Rearrange everything back here. And when you get to the end, do another back stitch. And we're done. So now we can clip our strings here from the front, and it looks nice and neat. Sometimes you'll have little threads that poke through that you didn't quite get. You can still pull them out. I usually don't really sweat it because, you know, these are used diapers after all, and they'll come out in the wash. Okay, so my front is all nice and beautiful now. It's nice and clean and soft and neat. Now it's time to handle these tabs. These are a pain in the butt to take off because they crisscross them, and so even if you buy a refresher kit directly from BumGenius, they tell you just leave it on and sew right over top of it. So you can either use the loop tape that comes in the roll like I had, or I also buy pre-cut tabs. They're already cut for me and they're just the right size, so I'm just gonna use these. Otherwise you would just take the tape and cut it to the size you need. And BG really makes it easy because they leave these flaps, you know, kind of free for you. So all I have to do is stick the new one right over top of the old one. And go to town. Again, very important to make sure that you've got the back of the diaper out from under it, otherwise you're just going to sew a big mess here. Always finish with a back stitch. Okay. And my strings. Now, granted, you can really only get away with this once, sewing a new laundry tab over top of the old one. And, you know, you can see the old one kind of sticks out. I can take my scissors and just trim as much of it off as I can without getting rid of the seams. But otherwise, you know, it's really no big deal. Everybody knows this is not a brand new diaper. It's not going to look brand new. It's just going to be refreshed. So I did the first one. Now on to the second one. Same procedure. Just take the new laundry tab, whatever size you cut it. If I weren't using these pre-cut ones, I'd probably cut them a little bit bigger. Let me give you an angle from the side here. Okay, see if that looks any different for the second one here. Oh, sounds like my baby's waking up, but I'm going to go ahead and finish this one, and then I'll get him. I always stop and reach under and make sure I've pulled out the whole diaper. Can you tell I'm really cautious because I've done this where I have accidentally sewed the diaper shut because I sewed right through it? Yeah, that stinks. Don't do it. Finished on a back stitch, cut my strings, Okay, baby is situated, so we've done the front, we've done the 2 laundry tabs, and now what's left is the actual tabs. So once again, I'm going to use my pre-cut loop ones. If you don't have those, that's okay. Just use loop tape. And there are certainly many ways to accomplish this task. This is just how I do it. I stick the 2 pieces together. Oh, you can hear my baby talking over there. I stuck the loop and the velcro and the hook and the loop together like a little sandwich, and I personally freehand it. Oh. There. I have my tab. If you want to take the old one and trace it and make it nice, that's great. But I just kind of freehand it. A lot of times I also do 1/2 and then kind of fold it over. And do the other half. Alright, gotta go take care of that babe, then we'll be back. Okay, I'm back. So we had cut the tabs. I like to make mine, you can see where I had cut out the old one. I like to make mine quite a bit wider, probably a good 1/2 inch wider. Just gets better grip that way. I mean, why make it tiny if it doesn't have to be? And then you lay the loop side on top and the hook side on bottom. And I always tend to double check this because I have done it the wrong way before. And then you got to start all over. So I just kind of feel around and make sure that they are lined up on the top and the sides where I can see, and just kind of trust that they're lined up everywhere else. And the tough part is like sliding it into the machine where they don't get misaligned. I always sew mine with the hook side down, loop side up. There. Again, needle down feature, if you have it, is great. And then you just power through. Always take a second to double check that everything is still kind of lined up, because this is your last chance to make adjustments. Before everything gets too tangled, I always cut off the old string, otherwise it wants to get caught up on all the little teeth. Nice and slow is your friend here. There's no reason to zip through it, only to find out that you only sewed one of the layers, or that it's all caught underneath. And I go 2 times around. Especially as you go around this top curve, just really use the pressure of your fingers to guide it through. Back stitch, and I'm done. So there we go, we've got the loop side and the hook side. And fits beautifully on my new laundry tabs, and now I'm going to do it again. Take my little sandwich apart. Make sure that you have loop on top and hook on bottom with the hook side facing out. I've also done it where I had the hook facing in. Also didn't work very well. Pinch it together right where you want it, and then I always lay it flat on my machine and then slide it in. For me, that's the technique that tends to work best. But after you do a few, you'll figure out what works for you. Last minute readjustments. Now that the little strings are facing me, I cut them off. Notice how around the curves I'm stopping, and when I need to turn better, I leave my needle down, lift up the presser foot, and pivot the fabric. And end with a back stitch. Okay, there you go. You now have fixed all the Velcro. What I have not addressed was replacing the elastic. I don't have to do that at this time, so I'm not going to include that in this video, but basically, for future reference, you just turn it inside out, and this is a 3.0, and I can tell the difference between the 3.0 and the 4.0 because of the elastic. But when you turn it inside out and look at the elastic casing, you can see where the elastic is tacked down. What you would basically do is use a seam ripper and undo this elastic, and then go to the other side and find where the elastic is tied down right here. Use a seam ripper and undo that elastic and pull the elastic out. And at that point, you have two choices. You can either undo this whole casing, which would be a huge pain in the butt, or you would use one of two things to get the elastic through. You could either take your elastic and hook a safety pin onto it and feed the safety pin through, tack and tack, or you can purchase something called a bodkin, which I can't seem, oh, here's mine. This is a bodkin. And the way a bodkin works is it looks like a pair of tweezers, and you slide the little thing back so that you can open it. You put the elastic in between the tweezers and then slide this circle forward so that it's a really tight grip onto the elastic. And then you can fish this whole thing through and then pull the elastic through the casing and then sew it down and then release the bodkin. So that's a really neat little tool for doing elastic. It's like $4 on Amazon or something. So if you do a lot of elastic, it's nice. Okay. Let's check out our finished product here. Beautiful. Lovely job replacing the Velcro. It looks brand new and it's going to work for a couple more years.